Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald is the 10th film set in the wizarding world, and this film follows Albus Dumbledore, who enlists the help of his former student Newt Scamander in an effort to stop Gellert Grindelwald's plans of raising pureblood wizards to rule over all of the Muggles. In 2016, we received the first installment of the Fantastic Beasts series, and that was a movie that I was pretty lukewarm on. And it's funny, if you go back and watch my review of that film and compare it to my thoughts on this film, almost nothing has changed. Very little of my opinion has varied from that movie to this movie. The only sort of difference is the fact that I liked this movie significantly less. The Crimes of Grindelwald is by far the worst film that takes place in the wizarding world. Pretty easily. This film is dull, it's lifeless, and it is the only movie in this entire franchise that I never want to watch again. I'm honestly struggling with where to begin about what I didn't like about this movie, so let's start with the characters. I still think that Eddie Redmayne is the perfect choice to portray Newt Scamander. I think that Katherine Waterston, although she's not in the movie for very long, she's fine, and Dan Fogler, who is also in this film, does exactly what he did in the first movie, which is to make jokes and to be the substitute for the audience in the film and to be constantly amazed by all of these magical things happening around him. Ezra Miller reprises his role as Credence in this film, and even in this movie, he's not a character that I find myself to be particularly interested in. In this movie, he's essentially reduced to just being a plot device and a character that doesn't change all that much from the beginning to the end of the film. Not only that, but Ezra Miller appears to just be copying his performance from We Need to Talk About Kevin and pasting it into this movie, pretty much doing the exact same thing. And if you saw the previous film, you would know that Grindelwald is portrayed by Johnny Depp. And look, it's not that Johnny Depp does a bad job in this movie, but my God, was he miscast. Johnny Depp isn't an intimidating person. He's a bad person, but he's not intimidating. And if this character is supposed to be one of the most powerful and intimidating wizards, then they absolutely failed bringing him to life in this film. And not only is the actor that plays him not intimidating, but this character, oh boy, does he look ridiculous. Especially in some of the flashback scenes where you see a younger version of him, it's honestly laughable. And in addition to that, if this is supposed to be one of the more infamous, well-known wizards, then this film doesn't really give me so much reason to think so. And for a movie called The Crimes of Grindelwald, this character doesn't really commit all that much crime. And what was disappointing is I thought watching this movie, especially with today's socio-political climate, I thought this film would at least attempt to portray a character who uses these fear-mongering tactics to incite this very devout following amongst his peers. And I do feel that this film doesn't adequately portray that. Now, don't get me wrong, he does kill a couple of people in this movie, but as far as villains are concerned, that's pretty common territory. And instead of doing something inventive with this character, he's essentially the Harry Potter equivalent to being Magneto. You replace wizards with mutants, you have pretty much the exact same character. This film also has the addition of a young Dumbledore, who in this movie is portrayed by Jude Law. And for anybody that is going to this film really looking forward to seeing Dumbledore and seeing him grapple with this inner turmoil about what to do with Grindelwald, then you are probably going to be pretty disappointed, because this movie doesn't have that much Dumbledore in it. In fact, I would guess that this film probably has somewhere between 10 to 15 minutes of this character in this film. And keep in mind, this is nearly a 2.5 hour long movie, which is strange because Jude Law actually does a really good job as Dumbledore, but for some reason they decide to kook him up in Hogwarts for almost the entire film. And speaking of Hogwarts, this movie has a shocking amount of references and callbacks to the Harry Potter universe that fans are sure to recognize. For example, the Bogart makes a return in this film, as well as a brief appearance of Quidditch. And although these references are supposed to give us Harry Potter fans this warm feeling of nostalgia, you know what they actually did? they made me want to go watch a better movie, because there are 8 other movies that feature all of these things, and they're a hell of a lot better than this slog, I can tell you that. And that's ultimately what this film is. This movie is 2 hours and 13 minutes that consists of about a dozen subplots and even more characters. Just like the first film in this series, J.K. Rowling wrote the screenplay for this movie. And I do not know why they allowed this again, because I remember this was one of my biggest issues with the first film. With what actually takes place in this film, this movie has no reason to be as dense as it is. There are far too many subplots and far too many characters, most of whom are pretty dull. Now, I do have an assumption of what happened in the making of this film and why this movie is as dense as it is. The average Harry Potter book is about 450 pages, which is so much bigger than the average screenplay. And J.K. Rowling is a person who obviously has a ton of ideas. And I'm curious to know, is there anyone behind the scenes who is essentially pulling back the reins of J.K. Rowling? Because after seeing the final product of this film, I would assume no. And following this movie, I feel like this series has a very strong similarity to another set of prequels to another very popular series. Of course, I'm referencing the Star Wars prequels. And what happened there is essentially Rick McCollum let George Lucas kind of do whatever he did. And love it or hate it, the end product of those films was George's vision. And I'm concerned that that's what's happening here. Screenplays and books are not interchangeable. And although some of the ideas in this movie may work in a book, I'll tell you this, they did not transfer well to screen. Because most of what this film is a massive stepping stone to another sequel down the line. And it's this weird dichotomy because although a lot happens in this movie, almost nothing happens too. It is difficult to explain, but there are so many characters and so many subplots, all of which don't really amount to much. And when all is said and done, I feel like most of the events that happen in this film could easily fit into a much tighter and focused film, and one that doesn't feel like a gigantic trailer for a sequel. I do hope that this series improves, because supposedly we do have 3 more films coming down the pipe, but unfortunately, this movie really annihilated any anticipation that I had for a sequel. So did you guys see Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald? What did you think about it? Leave your thoughts and opinions down below. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching today. I hope you liked today's video, and if you did, you can click on the link down below and subscribe to my channel to see more movie reviews and movie related things. And guys, thank you so much for watching. See you next time.